Hi, welcome to my parlor. Hi, I'm Priscilla Andrews with Prairie Parlor, and today I'm going to bring you another tutorial. Today's tutorial is going to be using Fimo's Leather Effects Clay. We're going to be making a bracelet that is made up of 3 parts, joined together with findings, and then I have a stretch bracelet attached to it just for effect. Here's another example of what we're going to be working on today, a 3-part bracelet, and guess what? This is the actual bracelet that I'm going to show you how to make. So let's get that Fimo Leather Effects cranking. These are the things we're going to be using to make this bracelet, or one like it. This is the Fimo leather that I'm using today, and I'm using these colors because I'm going to show you how to blend the Leather Effects clay. It's very different from the regular polymer clay that you're used to working with. So I'm going to be using several colors here, and then you need a ruler or a grid under what you're working on to get the sizes right. This is a 2.5 inch round cutter. Just find one at approximately the same size because that works best for this bracelet. And we're going to be using the pasta machine, and that's about it for this. I am going to start with the centerpiece here, which I'm going to make a solid color. So this is the color I'm using for the center, and I just wanted to show you how different Fimo leather is. This is just one run through my pasta machine on the setting of 0, which I have an Atlas 180, and your Fimo leather is never really going to lose those cracked edges. It doesn't condition like other clay. So what you have to do is just keep putting it through the pasta machine until you have a center part that's big enough without the cracks. Right, here I have that color put through the pasta machine, and this is on setting number 3. And you might think it's a little thin because we're used to working with other clays, but it's not for this Fimo leather. If it's thicker, it seems to be harder. So number 3 setting is what I used for all of these. And look at that. It's just a really nice thickness to be comfortable and to use. So this is a number 3 setting. And I've taken this 2.5 inch round cutter, and I'm just going to cut a piece out of that. Fimo leather is just a little bit harder to cut than regular clay too. So we have our cutter here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out so that we have a 1 inch strip. And on here, you're going to want to center it. I think this got a little off. I'd rather have it a little longer. I'm going to center it here, and I'm going to cut it off on the top, and I'm going to cut it off on the bottom. And there you have your centerpiece for your bracelet. When I'm going to add texture to a piece, for example, like I did here on this one, that's an impression, I run it out on a setting thicker, which means I ran this one out on a number 3 setting to be just a flat surface. This one I ran it out on a number 2 setting, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this little fondant texture sheet that I cut up, and I'm going to make an impression on it. And the way that I found works best, as you've probably seen on other tutorials, is just walk your fingers around on top of the texture sheet. Otherwise, if you use a roller, it distorts the pattern because it comes in and pushes clay off in other directions, and your pattern gets distorted. But I want to show you one other thing, and that's if you're going to add texture to that. And that back will smooth out when it bakes. There. You've got a nice little texture there. So I'm going to use my cutter, and I'm going to center this as best as I can so that I have one of those right in the center of the pattern. And it's a little tough to cut. You have to press harder than you're used to with regular clay. And it just so happens that this pattern is 1 inch wide. You see that? So I'm going to cut this pattern right there and right there. Now I'm a little bit off on the round, so if you want to fix that, I just come in and do it like that. Just make that piece a little more uniform. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to use a mica powder on top of that to show the texture off. So let me get that for you. Because I'm going to be blending turquoise with this coral color, I am going to use a turquoise mica powder. This one is the Tide Pool, and the way that this works best, and it's not as bad as glitter, but it still gets all over. First thing I do is I take one of these little dot cutters, and I'm actually using this end to make my hole right at the 1/2 inch mark, which is where we're going to be attaching the rest of the bracelet. And I do that in just a little bit, and that size seems to work pretty well for me on putting your bracelet together. It's big enough to hold a couple of things. So now what I'm going to do, since I have mica powder already on my finger, I'm just going to go ahead and I always rub my finger around in the cover a little bit to make sure I don't have gobs of it someplace. And then I'm just going to brush it on lightly like that. And that is going to give me the highlights of the pattern that I need. But there's my centerpiece. All right, now that I've got the centerpiece done, I am going to take these two colors and I'm going to do a Skinner blend with them. And I'll show you how we do that. I have both of these rolled out at 0, and it's a little more difficult to do a Skinner blend in its true sense because of the clay being just a little different texture. So go ahead and just do a rough Skinner blend. And what I mean by that is I just take these and just kind of do the best you can with getting what you need where. And if it doesn't work the best, then I cheat by taking a piece here and shoving it in there. A little bit more for the corner here. And you know what? There we go. That's good enough for what we're going to do. Push that together, and I'm going to show you the blend process as we do it. Now I'm at 5 passes through the pasta machine for my Skinner blend, and you will notice it's just starting to blend. But I wanted to mention that our goal here is to have a piece that is 5 inches by 1 inch long. So as you do this Skinner blend, since it's going to be this way, 5 inches long this way, as you do your Skinner blend, just keep pushing it in and keeping it as long as you possibly can. So I'm going to go back and put this through a couple more times and see where we are with our blend. This is 10 times through the pasta machine, and we're starting to get a better blend here. That's probably pretty close to where I stopped with this one. If you want it finer, keep going. This is on the 0 setting, and so I have almost 3 inches right now, and when I do it on the setting up to number 3, it should be 5 inches long. But I'm going to go run it through just a couple more times for a little better blend, and I'll be right back. It's good that this happened while I was doing the video. And what that was is, first of all, I usually wear gloves because this clay really turns your fingers colors, the blue especially. And what I did was I was going to show you what it looked like, run through the pasta machine like 15 times. And the center started turning to mud color, because anytime you take coral or blue and you mix it too much without a white in the middle, it's going to turn into a muddy color. So I had to start over. And so this is about 10 times through the machine. And I've got my 5 inches. I'm going to go 2 to 7. And I'm going to get the area that I want. First of all, which side looks best. So I've got my 5 inches. So I am going to cut a 1-inch section from this of the color that I want. And that's going to be from there. See how difficult this is to cut? It always leaves a little stuff there. And then 1 inch is there. So it kind of looks like a sunrise with the orange on the bottom and the blue on the top. It's nice turquoise color. So there I have my 1 inch wide, and now I'm going to make it 5 inches long. And this is run out at number 2 or number 3 on the pasta machine again. There's my 5-inch section. And now all I do is cut it in half. So each piece is 2.5 inches long. And there I'm going to have my bracelet. Now the orange will, to get this shape on here, I use a vase. This is just a cheap vase that I got at Goodwill. You can probably see the marks from all the other times that I've done it. So I take the vase and I put this on it like that, like that, and like that. And now I'm going to go bake it for 30 minutes at the recommended temperature. You will also be needing, to complete the bracelet, some Stretch Magic elastic cord of the size that's going to go through the stones that you're going to use. I'm going to be using these faux turquoise bone-shaped beads, they call them. And these are some carnelian beads that I had, that I pulled the colors out that matched that coral color the best. We're going to be using clamps on the end, and you have to make sure those clamps are 1 inch approximately. And you're going to be using your pliers. These are the two that I work the best with when working with my jewelry findings. You're going to need jump rings of different sizes. And these are the spacer beads that I'm going to use in between those, I think. We'll see how it looks when I get it together. You're also going to need a connector. Here we have our center and our sides. I had earlier cut out and baked some forms. So I was looking at this, and I think I'm just going to glue a flower somewhere on there, maybe right in the middle. We'll see. I also have my beads that I showed you earlier, and we're going to go ahead and get started with putting this bracelet together. I'm going to start with putting these clamp ends on these pieces. You will need 4 of these. And here's another nice thing about Fimo leather. This is 1 inch. The clamp is not quite 1 inch, so those corners stick out. So all you do is you take a scissors, and I just round those corners off. And I could have done this while I was making it, but I forgot. Here's the nice thing about Fimo leather, is it just cuts like a thin piece of leather. So now this fits a lot better on the end. So I'm just going to take and center that and clamp it on like that. I make sure that I clamp it all the way from the center to the ends and flatten that, and there's your clamp. Going to do that 4 times, 1 for each end. I have my ends on now, and so I'm going to go ahead and connect them to the centerpiece. I have 10, I think they're 10mm jump rings, because they're just a little tougher, and looks like I need to open that one up a little bit more, but I'm going to make it because this clay just bends. There we go. And I'm going to put one on here. And I'm going to put another one on the other side. You also need a bigger jump ring here if you're going to be adding the second feature of the bracelet, which is the elastic Stretch Magic. So I'm going to use the little 4mm on those to give me a little extra length there and to make it easier to get into the connector. So this one is going to go here. And this one is going to go here, but it's going to be attached with these little ones, so that it's more easily slipped in and out of that hole. And I usually use 2 or 3 of these because it just makes it so much easier to get that part in. Okay, this is my third one, and now that is going to link to that. There you go. We might only need 2, depending on the length and how easy it is to get it in and out of there. But now we've got our connector on. So if you wanted to stop right here, you've got a bracelet. And I'm just going to go one step further and put a little bit more on that bracelet. And we're going to start by cutting a 10-inch length of our Stretch Magic we have here. And an important part of doing a bracelet like this is stretching that out before you put stuff on it. There we go. Look, it's about 11-12 inches long now. The first thing that I'm going to do is tie a knot a couple inches from the end of one end, so that my beads don't go sliding off when I'm making this. And I put 2 or 3 knots in there, but not too many. So I have my beads all laid out in the design that I want them to have. And it needs to be about right around 6 inches long. And so I'm going to use these end pieces to connect. I tied 3 knots in my Stretch Magic. And now I'm going to run that down. I'm going to run this through that little tiny hole down there. There we go. So that I have a knot inside of that. And just for good measure, I go ahead and add, I'm going to super glue it and then cut this part off and clamp it shut. I'm using this to just put a little drop in there. I'm going to cut that long end off and get super glue on my scissors, which I better wipe off right away. And then I'm going to close that on that knot. And now we have a little bit prettier end than just a super glued knot. Now I'm going to string up my beads, and then we'll attach the other end. Now my beads are all strung on my elastic thread here. So now it's time to do the same thing as we did on the other end, which is run this through that hole in there. And then I'm going to make some knots. And there, I got it. Not too tight and not too loose. Don't need much, but just enough to put those 3 knots in there. Who can use super glue without getting it on your fingers? And now I'm going to cut that end. And there's a little bit sticking out. Put that knot back in there and close it. So I just make sure that's clamped nice and tight. And then I come back later with my wire scissors that comes in real close and I cut that little end off. So now that we have that done, what are we going to do with it? Now it's really easy to take that end and just put it on there and close it. Nice and snug. So we've got that one. And now I'm going to bring this one around and I'm going to hook this one onto the jump ring between those 2 parts in the same way. Just like that. And now we're going to close it. And we're done. Here is your bracelet. And when you put it on, I just run my wrist through the stretch part like that. And there's my bracelet. I added a little heart. I super glued that heart on there. And now we have our 2-part bracelet. We have lots of colors and textures to play with. Here's a couple other ones. I just added a little charm to the front. This one I made to look kind of more like leather. And then we have some of the other ones that I've already shown you that you can add things to, glue them on, and then we have our bracelet.